Welcome to GMA's Workers' Compensation Overall Loss Analysis. Again, we're going to look at 2014 through 2016. Again, did this for our other association, ACCG, on Tuesday for both workers' compensation and property and liability insurance pools. The interesting thing, during the property and liability section, which comes at 2 o'clock, we had a fire alarm. So we had to evacuate. So I hope that doesn't happen today. With that being said, let's go on. Why are we here? So we're going to do the overview of, as I talked about, just really talk about details where incidents are occurring. But ultimately speaking, the premise behind this is to work with you as members to identify trends within your organization and within the insurance pool as a whole, to be able to predict where our losses are going to be in the future. We want to be able to use that 80-20 rule to really identify where 80% of the losses are occurring within 20% of your organization. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get quite to that 20%, but we'll be able to narrow it down where most of our losses are occurring. Again, the reason for doing that is, I'm sure like all of us, we all have limited resources. We all have lots of things to do. So in order to be effective, we need to be able to focus our attention to those areas that we're going to have the biggest impact in reducing things. We're going to talk about a lot of things where we might have issues. We won't have any control over those particular things, or we might have very little control. If that's the case, if we're not going to be able to have an impact, we probably shouldn't focus on them. We should focus on something we're going to have an impact to be able to reduce those losses to your organization and to the pool as a whole. Again, developing process to control those predicted losses. We'll talk about those, what you can do, what we offer. And then, again, your data is really the best data for you, but depending on the size of the organization, your statistical sample might be too small to be significant. So if you have probably less than 100 employees, your statistical sample is going to be so small that you might have variations of an incident that really, you might have one or two incidents that they don't really show a trend. So the best thing you can do in regards to planning and attacking losses is looking at the pool's data, because that's probably going to more than likely reflect your data over time. With that being said, any questions or comments before I go on? So claims cost by year, and you can look at this. This is from 2014, 15, and 16. As you can see, we've had about $33 million over those 3 years, about almost 6,000 claims within that 3-year period. So you look at that, and it looks like we've had kind of an improvement. In reality, though, workers' compensation insurance has usually a 2 to 3 times development factor after the first year, meaning that $9 million will probably turn into somewhere between $18 and $27 million in total incurred. And more than likely, we have seen a pretty, I don't think the claims increase that much, but you might see a little bit of increase. So I think the good news is we've seen, I think, a pretty good trend in regards to number of claims. It's yet to be determined if our total incurred costs have been improved. So total incurred is really reserved, what we've reserved plus what we've paid. So anything we've paid on medical, anything we've paid on indemnity, that'd be time off, settlements, anything we paid on legal, that's paid, plus anything we anticipate, this is the adjuster anticipates we're going to have to pay. So that's a reserve. So if we anticipate that somebody's going to have surgery in 6 months, we would reserve for that, and we'd put away the costs of the surgery and whatever time off and whatever else expenses associated with that. That's the way this works. So we judge our adjusters based on how accurately they reserve. And where this comes into play is sometimes we don't know what's going to happen, so we reserve on what we know at the time. And again, in 6 months from now or a year from now, somebody that had a shoulder might need to have surgery. And again, at that point in time we learned that, then we would reserve appropriately. And you can see that's how those figures develop. Again, this is our work comp claims cost by department. And again, we're trying to narrow it down. You see, I even eliminated a lot of departments we have that had 0%. They had some claims, some dollars associated with those, but I eliminated those from this chart in order to make it a little bit easier for you guys to see. As you can see from this, our police department has 32% of claims and 40% of total incurred. So that's almost $13 million within that 3-year period. Public Works are 18% of claims at almost 16% of total incurred at almost $5.2 million. Fire and EMS, 12% of claims, 13% of total incurred at $4.1 million. And water utilities, and again this is a fairly unique depending on the city you belong to, 7% of claims, 21% of total incurred. So if you add all those together, we have 69% of claims and 79% of total incurred. And it's not saying we shouldn't do things in other departments, that's not what I'm saying, but if we're going to focus, from my perspective, based on the information we have, this is where we should be putting our resources. This is where we should be spending most of our time in order to resolve some of the risks within those particular departments. So again, if you don't have statistical information or your statistical information is so small, this is where I would go. Claims cost by year, years of service. So this is, again, breaking down all the workers' compensation claims within the GMA pool and really finding out how many years of service did employees have when they had their incidents. And as if you can look at this, those things highlighted in yellow are really the first 5 years. You have the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, and then the 1 through 5 total. So it's 40% of dollars and 49% of incidents occur within the first 5 years. So if we're looking, and again you can see 5-year periods, 10-year periods, nothing even comes close to the first 5 years in regards to that level of incidents and or costs associated with that. So what I would deduct from this is we really need to ensure we're hiring the best employees, because that's a big part of that. We need to ensure and that they are qualified for the job, not only mentally or background, but also physically qualified for those particular positions. And then also in regards to we need to ensure that we have a good training policy and supervision process so that when they get into that particular position, we're ensuring they know what their hazards are, they know how to control those, and they're following through with those controls when they're putting those into the position. This would be the best way to go through that process, and we can help you with that at a later time. When we look at cost per age, again, this is a kind of an interesting slide. I typically think maybe the folks in their 20s have the highest number of injuries. Well, if you look at teens, and again, this is relative to the number of people we have within an organization. So I'm not sure how many people within each organization. I would assume probably the 40s has the biggest number of 40-year-olds within cities based on the cities I've seen. But you get in 20, they have about 17% of the incidents, but only 6% of the dollars. They have a lot of incidents, but they recover quickly from those. 30s, again, they're in their 25% of incidents, 20% of dollars. 40s, 25% of incidents, which again, probably the biggest population, but they have 33% of dollars. The 40-year-olds don't recover as well, and again, get down to the 50s, 22 and 23. We have people in their 70s, 60s, and 70s, and even 80s working for us, which is really fantastic. But we need to ensure they're paying special care and we're paying special care. If we look at the next slide, this is by sex, male and female, and you can see here about 87% of incidents in dollars, 82% of incidents are within the male group. So should we get rid of all of our male? Well, I think there might be a correlation to where males are working in the higher risk positions. So law enforcement, fire, public works, what is the percentage of males within those particular departments? And you might find in those particular situations we probably have about that same correlation. So I'm not sure if this tells us that much. I'm going to just check and see if anybody has any questions. Anybody have any questions, comments, suggestions? I'm going to reach out and talk to somebody really quick. Let's see. Somebody I haven't talked to. Rosalind Neely, are you out there?
Hi, Dan. I am here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you fine.
Excellent. Are you learning anything?
I am, and some of it is just confirmation for what, you know, the reports were already showing and what we were kind of thinking.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Where are you at today?
Pardon?
Where are you calling from?
I'm in my office.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you for participating. Any other questions?
Not from me, but thank you for asking.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Let's see if there's anybody else. Okay. We'll go on to the department slides. And again, this is the police department. And I've selected what I think are our biggest opportunities, the thing we can have an impact on within police departments. So altercations, 23% of our total incurred associated with that, 27% of the claims. Foot pursuits, I think, are something that we can have an impact. MVA is motor vehicle accidents. We'll talk about that in our next presentation regarding property and liability, but that's 14% of total incurred, 13% of claims. Incidents while training, again, doing defensive tactics training or physical training, anything to that effect. We're seeing about 10% of our incidents within the police department related to training. Exiting and entering motor vehicles, about 5% of our incidents. A very simple task, people getting in and outside of motor vehicles. About 5% of our total incurred, almost $600,000 in those 3 years related to people getting in and out of their vehicles. People wearing a duty belt, only 3% of the claims. Again, people wearing, that's caused ergonomic claims up to $400,000. Struck by motor vehicles. We don't have many claims associated with that. We only really have 6, but those are very expensive claims, as you would imagine. And then shootings. So I feel that, again, if you look at altercations and shootings, foot pursuits, motor vehicle incidents, slip and falls, incident while trainings, entering and exiting motor vehicles, you're going to have about 79% of the total incurred associated with that. Those are the things we can attack. So you can say, how do we attack altercations? Well, ultimately speaking, it's trying to avoid those particular situations. It's putting our law enforcement officers, giving them the skills to, rather than to have an altercation, they're going to be able to talk their way out of those situations. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's what we're suggesting, and this is what we're doing. Some of the things we're doing, and some of the things services we can help provide to you. One, we're trying to focus on those members that are having the biggest opportunities, and we call them opportunity and targeted members. So we're directing our public safety risk consultants, the people that operate our simulators, towards those law enforcement agencies with high motor vehicle incidents. Then we're looking at members with high rates of claims within law enforcement, and we're conducting problem solving and action planning. So the way this works is we identified 6 people within a department, a couple leaders, a couple frontline people, and we sit them down and we provide them training on how to analyze loss and how to attack it from an action planning perspective. What comes out of this? They come up with their plan, they identify their issues, And rather than us telling the department, this is your problem, they volunteer that information. They come up with their own identified issues. They come up with their own identified action plan, and it's their problem and it's their solutions, and they own it. And ultimately speaking, that's what changes a culture. So that's one of the things we're trying to emphasize this year. And again, we're looking for people that want to participate in this process. It's about a 4-hour training session down to, again, we do it to the department level. We'll talk about this in all aspects, whether it's law enforcement or other areas. We have audits that really focus in on two things. One, we have a broad audit, but we developed 2 audits based on motor vehicle operation to see how you're operating vehicle in pursuits and evac, but also just in general distracted driving situations. We also have an audit on use of force. These are audits we can do based on your request. We'd love to go in there and say, do you have the right policies and procedures? Are you following those policies and procedures? This is something we can offer. Driver training. Again, our public safety risk consultants, we have 3 of those out there doing the driving simulator training. And we're going to change that up a little bit this year. Rather than focusing on evac and pursuit driving, we're really going to focus on defensive driving tactics. That's where we're seeing a lot of our incidents. That's where we're seeing a lot of the severe incidents is relating to rear-ending people, hitting fixed objects, things to that effect. And we really want to focus and see if we can resolve some of those particular issues. We have a hands-on train the trainer backing course we've been rolling out. We've packaged that. We'll be distributing that later on this year. Again, continue with the pursuit and evac. And we have 6 other modules that our drivers, our public safety risk consultants do. We are in the process of purchasing a simulator, and we're going to put a kind of the train the trainer de-escalation training simulator. This would really provide employees with the ability to verbally talk down altercations and resolve those without putting themselves in that. And then we'll go through simulators to be able to make sure they're able to do that. I got a question here, I think from Amy Henderson. We got a couple. Do cities have the elected leaders, city managers that promote safety, have better claims history? You know, Amy, I don't know if I could say that, and I guess I'd ask that to everybody else. I think if we have city managers, elected officials that are better engaged, more than likely over a long period of time, we're going to have a better culture and we're going to have results. A lot of this is to do, again, there's always exceptions to that based on the smaller pool. But if we have a city that's engaged and driving things from a leadership perspective, I think that's good. I'm going to see if I can get Michael Cronin in here. He's on the line, so hold on. Michael, are you out there? Michael, can you hear me? Michael Cochran.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, my question, I'm with Powder Springs Police Department, and my question was how soon is all this training going to be available?
So the simulator training is available at this point in time, so we can do that. We are upgrading our systems. That'll come in May with the defensive driving training, so that'll probably be in the latter part of the year. I would say the de-escalation training will probably be in the September-October frame period.
Okay. All right,
okay.
I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the question. Excellent. And again, we do all kinds of other training. This training, Michael, is available now, so we do below 100 training. We can do that. It's great in regards to officer safety, seat belts, wearing body armor, a variety of things. Very impactful. We hear a tremendous amount of positive feedback regarding that training. High-risk critical task training we have that really focuses towards the property and liability, but that's available. And safety officer training. So we rolled this out in 2 years ago in a regional training concept for law enforcement. And as you saw, we have a lot of incidents, 10% of those related to training. The concept is rather than rather than doing the person that's doing training being also the safety person, you have an independent person that's there to stop things if they start to escalate. So we see a lot of incidents related to defensive tactics. And again, where that comes from, you get one person does one thing and then it starts to escalate. So having an independent person there that's not the trainer, that's there just for one reason, to make things safer, they would stop that situation before it escalated and got somebody hurt. The same thing would be true with all the other type of training we see where we have issues. And again, that concept we got from the Minnesota pool, and it's been very successful up there, and we'd like to build that down here. Fire department claims. Again, the first bullet point up there is non-category. You can see it's a very high percentage of claims, but not a very high dollar. Non-category claims are claims that are like struck by, caught between, sharp objects, things to that effect. They don't necessarily have a cause. Ergo is ergonomic claims. That's pushing, pulling, lifting, things to that effect. Exposure, those would be claims in regards to getting exposed to blood or exposed to some chemical or exposed to heat to some extent. Slips and falls, those would include all different types of issues related to that. Training, again, incidents while training, you can see 27% of the dollars within fire are incidents while training, and that gets back to that safety officer concept. Fighting fires is also 27% of the incidents, and again, I didn't highlight that because I don't think we could have a tremendous impact in regards to that. That's something we don't necessarily do, and there's so many variables that wouldn't be something I want to attack. But lifting patients is definitely something that's very specific. We have a very specific training process for this. We're piloting that in a couple of years. We're going to talk about that. And then exiting and entering motor vehicles. We have about $400,000 over that 3-year period where people are getting hurt getting in and out of fire trucks. It might sound simple, but it's something that we really need to focus on to try and resolve. So if you take all those together, ergonomics, training, slips and falls, exiting and entering motor vehicles, lifting patients, they're about 64% of total incurred. That's where I would suggest we focus. And again, same thing would be true if we have a department with a fire department with a lot of issues. We would suggest doing problem solving and action planning, training those folks on to solve their problems. Again, we can come in and do a training. We can do a lot of different training, but if the employees and the leadership is not bought into the process, if they don't own the problem, that training is not going to have as big of impact. And we're really looking for people, again, the only way to change the culture is through leadership commitment and employee engagement, and that's what this does. Again, we have the same type of training we can offer fire departments in regards to their claims, and then we have a variety of different other training that we're doing. This fit responder training was developed by a physical therapist that was a former EMT, and it's really specific towards, a lot of it's towards lifting these heavy patients and how to do that, the best posture, how to utilize some of the stretchers and other things that are out there, whether they're automatic or whether they're the old manual type. He has ways to be able to reduce the risk of that. And then if you do have an injury, he has ways to help reduce the severity of those particular incidents. And we've been piloting that in a couple different areas and would love to be able to share some of that information with you. Ergonomics training we can provide. Safety officer training, again, this is something that based on what your needs are, we'd be looking for your response. I'm going to go on to the next slide, which is really public works by cause. And as you can see here, slips and falls are our biggest opportunity with 32% of our total incurred costs associated with slips and falls. Ergonomics, again, lifting, pushing, pulling, about $1 million or 17% of our total incurred within public works. Falls off motor vehicles. So this is jumping off of trucks. This is usually jumping off the back of motor vehicles, really, and this is trucks primarily. So almost $700,000, 13% of our incidents. So what can you do about that? Well, one, have your supervisors enforce accountability that nobody's going to jump off the back of a truck. We have people just voluntarily jumping off. Again, they think that's the quickest way to do that. They're young, they think they're super people, and they jam their knee, they jam their ankle, they strain their arm, whatever it might be. But it accounts for about $700,000, probably going to be close to $1 million+ when it develops. Again, tree work. We'll talk about that a little bit more on the next page. But almost $500,000, or 9% of our total incurred, related to trees falling in the roads, trees falling and having to take care of those. And then motor vehicle accidents at 6%. So if you take all those into account, you have 77% of your total incurred. This is where I would focus. Again, water utilities. Again, this is a fairly unique department depending on where you're at. But the non-category, caught between sharp objects, that's about 17%. Not necessarily sure how we would focus on those things. They're varied. But ergonomics, strains, lifting, pushing, pulling, about 35% of the incidents at about $1.4 million. Slips and falls, 16%. Fall off equipment, again, the same thing, jumping off equipment, whether it's backhoes and other things, we're seeing about $600,000. And then trenching. We've had 4 incidents that equate for about $500,000. Very basic blocking and tackling, things that should never happen. Not only are they very expensive, but those could have cost these employees their lives because of the severity of getting in a trench without having it properly supported. And again, we had a couple trenches collapse and cause severe damage to 4 employees. So with that being said, this is what we're suggesting within public works and the water utilities. Again, we'd offer that same process for problem solving and action planning. We have, rather than the simulator training, we have defensive driver training. We have the backing train the trainer course we can provide. We provide some training on trenching. We provide training slips and falls. We provide training on ergonomics. We have a tree work video package, so we can send that to your this video package, depending on how many people are requesting it. We can send it out, and you can. It's got videos in regards to chainsaw operation, has PowerPoint presentations, but it really goes through as bucket lifts, getting into bucket lifts, a variety of different things to help you reduce risks, so that people know what the risks they're putting themselves in when they're going and doing that particular type of work. 2 things we haven't developed yet, but we're working on, is a heavy equipment training. Again, we know we have a lot of employees operating heavy equipment and they need additional training, and so we're going to work at developing kind of video-based module that we can send out to members to be able to get a higher amount of distribution on that training. And then exiting and entering motor vehicles. We haven't developed that. Hopefully we'll have that by the end of the year. And if you have anything like that, let us know. But we see a tremendous amount of people getting hurt this way. I know it sounds simple, I know it sounds elementary, but we need to make sure people know what the expectation is when they're getting in and out of motor vehicles, or when they're jumping off the back of motor vehicles. They know what those hazards are, and they're trying to control those. And that's the first step in making sure we change the culture, is people knowing what the risks of their behaviors are. Let's go see if we have any questions. Any questions, anyone? Any questions? Well, I'm going to move on. I'm just going to pull somebody up and see if we can have a little conversation. So get ready, everybody prepare. Michael Anderson, are you out there? Michael Anderson, are you out there?
Yes, I am.
How are you today?
Pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad. Are you getting anything out of this presentation?
Yes, definitely.
Excellent. What have you learned thus far that you'd like to share with the group?
Well, I know learning what kind of training that you provide.
Okay.
you know, and the backing trainer. I think that's really interesting, and about the ergonomics so far as a lot of incidents occurring due to ergonomics, you know, lifting, that kind of thing. So it gives me a chance to kind of compare what's going on here with other, you know, overall. So.
Excellent. Any questions you got for me?
Not so far.
Okay. I'm going to hang up on you or mute you, but keep on listening. Thank you for participating. So in conclusion, again, we want you to review your losses. We want you to review the pool's losses. And from my perspective, the best thing to do is to combine those together. Again, numbers tell a story, but they don't tell the entire story. And you need to look at that. I'm going to see, I got a question out there from Rosalind. Let's see. I'm going to see if I can, I'm going to unmute Rosalind. Are you out there?
Dan,
Rosalind.
It was on the last slide. I was wondering about the entering and exiting vehicle training. Is that something to this module, or have you offered that in the past?
We have not offered that in the past. We are in the process of developing that. So I think I'm not aware. I've been in safety and risk management for 20 plus years, and I'm not aware of anything that exists out there. So we're probably going to have to develop that, work with members to go out there, their areas, videotape some things, develop some procedures that people just know what the basics are. What's the best way to get it. Again, everybody has different motor vehicles. People have motor vehicles that are low, and you have to do different things to get into low motor vehicles. People have motor vehicles that are very high. People are getting in and out of the back of pickup trucks, or they're getting in and out of the back of different types of equipment. So we'd try to cover all those different aspects of things. We have not developed that as of yet, though.
Okay. Well, I am glad, because we have had one or two incidents over, the last few years where someone has been trying to either enter or exit a vehicle and has twisted a knee or an ankle.
Yeah, it's very common. It's very common. And again, if you would like to participate in this process, in the development of the training, let us know, because we'd love to get other people to help participate in that.
Okay. Well, I would like to follow up with you and see how us at City of Powder Springs can participate. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to mute you. So we have another. I'm going to see if I can talk to Vernon Barnett and see if he can have his. Let's see. Let's see if I can find you. Let me say, Meg, Meg, are you out there?
I'm here.
You have a question?
Yes, can we get a copy of the slides?
Yep, I'm going to send those to everybody along with the recording, so you can watch this many, many times in the future. It's going to be something that you and your family will cherish, I'm sure.
Super, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's see. Vernon, are you out there? Vernon. Well, I'm going to read his question. Where can I get more info on fit responder training? Here's what I would suggest you do, Vernon. Send me an email. It's something we're piloting it right at this point in time. We'd like to get it out there. We'd like to do probably something more than right now. It's very expensive. We've done it in a couple larger areas. We'd like to get something that's pretty general to be able to utilize, and I'll work with it. But if you're interested in that, send me an email at danbeck, or DBECK, at LGRMS.com, and I will shoot you some information. Okay. Shamela says LOL, which is I compliment. You can't say anything better than you're laughing at what I'm saying. I'm not sure what I said that was funny. And then Mia Sharpton. Let me see if I can see Mia Sharpton out there. Mia, are you out there? Mia is, what is backing Train the Trainer? So what we've done for that is we've developed a package course where we've developed a course. We'll bring you some pylons. We'll train your folks on how to conduct a backing training. Again, this is very, very labor intensive. We've done it in a few different locations. It takes us 4 to 5 people to go out and not only set this up, but manage it. So it has multiple drivers going through it at once. But we will set it up, train your folks on how to conduct this particular training. It's extremely valuable. We really take for granted that people can back, and most people have never really practiced this. And we've had sheriffs and public works go through it in their vehicles, and they've been very poor when they started, and by the end they were experts. And it's probably one of the best received training that we've provided, the best impact, because people actually practice and they get better at it. So hopefully that answers your question. Let's see. Again, just to keep on going here, you got identify predictable loss trends that impact you. Again, what can you impact? That's really what it is. You don't want to focus on something that you're going to be beating your head up against. You want to focus something that you can laser beam in on and that you can have an impact from a long-term and a short-term perspective. It's all about leadership, 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 leadership. It gets back to Amy's initial question in regards to leadership. The more leaders are engaged, the more they ask questions regarding these things, the more they support these initiatives, the better you're going to be. We can come in, we can provide training at the wazoo, but if your leaders aren't engaged, they're not committed to resolving some of these issues and changing the culture, it's not going to have an impact. And again, ultimately speaking, in order to be effective, we want to see an action plan. We have grants out there, but whether you want a grant or not, if you want to change your culture, if you want to have an impact, you want to get people engaged, you really need to have an action plan that's focusing in on these high-risk trends. So programs and policies. So what policies do you need, or do you need any? Again, from my perspective, it starts with those things. Then you train people, then you hold people accountable. It has to have some level of each of those. If you don't have those, and again, it comes down, you have to do these on a quality basis. If you don't do these, you're not going to be successful in changing the culture of your organization. Let me see, I got another question here. I guess Mia Sharpton says thank you. So thank you, Mia. Appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, with that being said, I'm going to end this presentation. I thank you so very much for your participation. Here's what I would suggest you do. 2 things. I'm gonna talk on somebody. Let's see if I can get somebody to answer these. Carrie Brown, are you out there?
Yes.
Hi, Carrie. So, if you want some of the services or support, if you have a question, what do?
I call LGRMS.
You can call LGRMS. You can call me. You can send me an email at dbeck@lgrms.com, and I'll send you an email so you'll know who to contact. If you want your individual loss analysis, you can come and get that from me. We'll send it to you. We have a new format that we can provide that will help you out a little bit in regards to that. If you're interested in learning more about the training, you can definitely contact me, or you can contact your field rep. Okay?
Good deal.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Could you send training information or tell us a website to check out? So here's the website, LGRMS.com. That's LGRMS.com. That'll get you there. If you're not already signed in or a member of that, just you'll go in, you'll register. I'll get that registration request, and I'll send you an approval, and we'll be good to go. Don't hesitate to call anytime. Again, I'll send out my contact information to everybody that registered for this particular course. We want to keep in contact. All the questions you have are the same questions everybody else has. So don't be afraid to ask them. And I know everybody has different levels of experience. We want to make you as successful as possible in reducing your risks and reducing your losses, because that makes the entire pool more successful. With that being said, I'm going to say farewell to you all. Thank you so very much. Enjoy the cold weather, because before you know it, it's going to be warm. And you're going to be wishing for a little air conditioning. So I'll talk to you later. You guys have a great rest of the day.